Hello everyone, and welcome back to Let's Play Skyrim. Last time we were just trucking along in Riften, and today we're simply going to continue doing exactly that. I fucking hate it when he sits down. We're here in the Mistvale Keep barracks. It's where the guards are all stationed, so need to be a little careful. We always need to be careful. We can never let ourselves be detected. Anyway, we're just going ahead and tackling Mistvale Keep. Because unlike Whiterun, the castle here is not the main deal inside the city. That honor, of course, belongs to the Thieves Guild.
Don't suppose you'd enchant my sword? Dull old blade can barely cut butter.
The good news is, not only do we have high sneak, particularly now that we've invested in some of the perks, but this area is pretty low lighting, so it's pretty easy to sneak around.
You won't get away.
Oh, god damn it. Of course, we gotta be careful.
You won't get away.
Anytime we hear somebody moving around, we know we need to pay attention. But we seem to be just fine. Good.
If those Whiterun guards can take down the dragon, so can we.
Let's head over here. This guy wants to walk this way for whatever reason. That's alright. We can still clear out this dresser. Go over here, do this table. I don't really expect any of the guards to have anything I need. Note the steel swords on the weapon plaques on the wall. I missed those the first few times I came in here. There's Mistvale Keep. We'll take that entrance to get in there. They've got some amulets, but we already have all we need of those. Let's just keep moving. We'll go upstairs from here. We will soon, anyway, after we clear out that little spot as well. Hooray!
I have to wonder, what does the Dragonborn do once he's been summoned by the Greybeards? Doom, what? Like, skill?
All this sneaking stuff gets much easier with, well, I should say all this stealing stuff gets much easier with 100 sneak and a few perks, as you can see. Let's not miss that bucket! Killing before you're killed, we've read. Same with all those. Let's go over here. Chance's Folly, we've read. Let's just keep going around the room this direction. Now here is a new book. It's a two-handed skill book, Words and Philosophy. Lady Bennock's Words and Philosophy. Well, let me pull it off the list. That's the last two-handed skill book. Of course, two-handed is already at 100, so It doesn't show up. But if I go to free skill boosts, two-handed now has 2 boosts left. We've found the last skill book. So all there is now are 2 quests. Lady Bennock's Words and Philosophy. Lady Elena Bennock, former master of the Valenwood Fighters Guild and head of the Emperor's personal guard in the Imperial City, has been leading a campaign to reacquaint the soldiers of Tamriel with the sword. I met with her on 3 different occasions for the purposes of this book. The first time was at her suite in the palace, on the balcony overlooking the gardens below. I was early for the interview, which had taken me nearly 6 months to arrange, but she gently chided me for not being even earlier. I've had time to put up my defenses now, she said, her bright green eyes smiling. Lady Bennock is a Bosmer, a wood elf, and like her ancestors took to the bow in her early years. She excelled at the sport, and by the age of 14 she had joined the hunting party of her tribe as a jackspur, a long-distance shooter. During the black year of 396, when the Parik tribe began their rampage through southeastern Valenwood with the aid of powers from the Somerset Isle, Lady Bennock fought the futile battle to keep her tribe's land. I killed someone for the first time when I was 16, she says now. I don't remember it very well. He or she was just a blur on the horizon where I aimed my bow. It meant no more to me than shooting animals. I probably killed 100 people like that during that summer and fall. I didn't really feel like a killer until that wintertide, when I learned what it was like to look into a man's eyes as you spilled his blood. It was a scout from the Parik tribe who surprised me while I was on camp watch. We surprised each other, I suppose. I had my bow at my side, and I just panicked, trying to string an arrow when he was half a yard away from me. It was the only thing I knew to do. Of course, he struck first with his blade, and I just fell back in shock. You always remember the mistakes of your first victim. His mistake was assuming because he had drawn blood and I had fallen that I was dead. I rushed at him the moment he turned from me towards the sleeping camp of my tribesmen. He was caught off guard and I wrested his blade away from him. I don't know how many times I stabbed at him. By the time I stopped, when the next watch came to relieve me, my arms were black and blue with strain. There was not a solid piece of him left. I had literally cut him into pieces. You see, I had no concept of how to fight or how much it took to kill a man. Lady Bennock, aware of this deficiency in her education, began teaching herself swordsmanship at once. You can't learn how to use a sword in Valenwood, she says, which isn't to say Bosmer can't use blades, but we're largely self-taught. As much as it hurt when my tribe found itself homeless, pushed to the north, it did have one good aspect. It afforded me the opportunity to meet Redguards. Studying all manners of weapon-wielding under the tutelage of Warday Akor, Lady Bennock excelled. She became a freelance adventurer, traveling through the wilds of southern Hammerfell into northern Valenwood, protecting caravans and visiting dignitaries from the various dangers indigenous to the population. Unfortunately, before we were able to pursue her story of her early years any further, Lady Bennock was called away on urgent summons from the Emperor. Such is often the case with the Imperial Guard, and in these troubled times, perhaps more so than in the past. When I tried to contact her for another talk, her servants informed me that their mistress was in Skyrim. Another month passed, and when I visited her suite, I was told she was in High Rock. To her credit, Lady Bennock actually sought me out for our second interview on Sun's Dusk of that year. I was in a tavern in the city called the Blood and Rooster when I felt her hand on my shoulder. She sat down at the rude table and continued her tale as if it had never been interrupted. She returned to the theme of her days as an adventurer, and told me about the first time she ever felt confident with a sword. I owned at that time an enchanted daikatana, quite a good one, of Daedric metal. It wasn't an original Akaviri, not even of design. I didn't have that kind of money, but it served my primary purpose of delivering as much damage with as little effort on my part as possible. Akor had taught me how to fence, but when faced with a life-or-death situation, I always fell back on the old overhand wallop. A pack of orcs had stolen some gold from a local chieftain in Meditia, and I went looking for them in one of the ubiquitous dungeons that dot the countryside in that region. There were the usual rats and giant spiders, and I was enough of a veteran by then to dispatch them with relative ease. The problem came when I found myself in a pitch-black room, and all around me I heard the grunts of orcs nearing in. I waved my sword around me, connecting with nothing, hearing their footsteps coming ever nearer. Somehow I managed to hold back my fear and to remember the simple exercises Master Akor had taught me. I listened, stepped sideways, swung, twisted, stepped forward, swung a circle, turned around, sidestepped, swung. My instinct was right. The orcs had gathered in a circle around me, and when I found a light, I saw that they were all dead. That's when I focused on my study of swordplay. I'm stupid enough to require a near-death experience to see the practical purposes, you see. Lady Bennock spent the remainder of the interview responding in her typically blunt way to the veracity of various myths that surrounded her and her career. It was true that she became the master of the Valenwood Fighters Guild after winning a duel with the former master, who was a stooge of the Imperial battle mage, the traitor Jagar Tharn. It was not true that she was the one responsible for the Valenwood Guild's disintegration 2 years later. Actually, the membership in the Valenwood chapter was healthy, but in Tamriel overall the mood was not conducive for the continued existence of a non-partisan organization of freelance warriors. It was true that she first came to the Emperor's attention when she defended Queen Akarethi of Sentinel from a Breton assassin. It was not true that the assassin was hired by someone in the High Court of Daggerfall. At least, she says wryly, that has never been proven. It was also true that she married her former servant Erkin after he had been in her service for 11 years. No one knows how to keep my weaponry honed like he does, she says. It's a practical business. I either had to give him a raise or marry him. The only story I asked her that she would neither admit nor refute was the one about Calaxes, the Emperor's bastard. When I brought up the name, she shrugged, professing no knowledge of the affair. I pressed on with the details of the story. Calaxes, though not in line for succession, had been given the Archbishopric of the One, a powerful position in the imperial city, and indeed over all Tamriel where that religion is honored. Whispering began immediately that Calaxes believed that the gods were angered with the secular governments of Tamriel and the Emperor specifically. It was even said that Calaxes advocated full-scale rebellion to establish a theocracy over the empire. It is certainly true, I pressed on, that the Emperor's relationship with Calaxes had become very stormy, and that legislation had been passed to limit the Church's authority. That is, up until the moment when Calaxes disappeared, suddenly, without notice to his closest of friends. Many said that Lady Bennock and the Imperial Guard assassinated the Archbishop Calaxes in the sacristy of his church. The date usually given was the 29th of Sun's Dusk, 3rd era 498. Of course, responds Lady Bennock with one of her mysterious grins, I don't need to tell you that the Imperial Guard's position is as protectors of the throne, not assassins. But surely no one is more trusted than the Guard for such a sensitive operation, I say, carefully. Lady Bennock acknowledges that, but merely says that such details of her duties must remain secret as a matter of Imperial security. Unfortunately, her ladyship had to leave early the next morning, as the Emperor had business down south. Of course, I couldn't be told more specifics. She promised to send me word when she returned, so we could continue our interview. As it turned out, I had business of my own in the Somerset Isle, compiling a book on the Sigic Order. It was therefore with surprise that I met her ladyship 3 months later in Firsthold. We managed to get away from our respective duties to complete our third and final interview on a walk along the Diceto, the great river that passes through the royal parks of the city. Steering away from questions of her recent duties and assignments, which I guessed rightly she was loath to answer, I returned to the subject of sword fighting. Frendar Hunding, she says, lists 38 grips, 750 offensive and 1,800 defensive positions, and nearly 9,000 moves essential to sword mastery. The average back hack and slasher knows one grip, which he uses primarily to keep from dropping his blade. He knows one offensive position, facing his target, and one defensive position, fleeing. Of the multitudinous rhythms and inflections of combat, he knows less than one. The ways of the warrior were never meant to be the easiest path. The archetype of the idiot fighter is as solidly ingrained as that of the brilliant wizard and the shrewd thief, but it was not always so. The figure of the philosopher swordsman, the blade-wielding artist, are creatures of the past, together with the sword-singer of the Red Guards, who was said to be able to create and wield a blade with but the power of his mind. The future of the intelligent blade-wielder looks bleak in comparison to the glories of the past. Not wanting to end our interviews on a sour note, I pressed Lady Elena Bennock for advice for young blade-swingers just beginning their careers. When confronted with a wizard, she says, throwing petals of cantleaf into the Diceto, close the distance and hit him hard. It's good advice. Alright. That was a pretty long book. We're at 15 minutes now. Here's an adept locked display case. Let's get this bad boy open. There we go. Couple of iron maces for the taking. Some more iron weaponry. Guards rarely seem to have anything better than that. Probably why they get massacred whenever they try to help me in a fight. Alright, now here's a balcony, or a walkway that we haven't quite been able to see. Let's head out here, and then I changed my mind. We'll just take the front door into the main zone and loot through there that way. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're up above Harold. Nothing here but a couple of barrels. But that's alright. The barracks are clear. Now, let's head into Mistvale Keep proper.
Hail, summoner. Conjure me up a warm bed, would you?
We've been going 17 minutes. Should at least be able to do the entire keep. Maybe the jail.
My cousin's fighting dragons, and what do I get? God duty.
Let's go clockwise for this endeavor.
My lady, Maven Blackbriar has sent word that she requires your seal in order to expand her shipments into Morrowind.
Disrespect the law, and you disrespect
But
me.
of course, tell her she'll have it. Maven is one of the few people I can trust, and I'd be delighted to give her my blessing.
Yes, my lady. I will pass the good news on to her.
This table is pretty difficult to rob. Probably the toughest thing we'll have in the entire keep. Unmid Snowshod. He's the housecarl.
As Jarl Leila's houseguard, I would ask that you maintain a respectable distance from her at all times. Did you have some sort of official business here? I'd request that when speaking to Jarl Leila, you show the proper respect.
I take it you protect the Jarl?
Indeed. There have been multiple attempts on the Jarl's life. We're not certain if it's the Dark Brotherhood or simply Imperial sympathizers. We've also had run-ins with spies attempting to probe our security for weaknesses. I work with the city guard to make certain they fail. At the end of the day, I'm the last line of defense for the Jarl. I will not allow her to fall.
Tell me your thoughts on the war.
Ulfric's a bloody hero. I don't think there's a worthy Nord alive who dare argue the point. He's taking the Empire to task and making them answer for their crimes. I don't think I'll be content until Ulfric sits upon the throne of Skyrim with the ashes of the Concordant at his feet.
Tell me about the Thieves Guild.
Liars and bastards. Every one of them. I'd have their heads on a pike if it wasn't for the war effort. All I need is a dozen men, and we could march into the Ratway and burn them out like rodents. Stormcloaks won't have it, though. Too busy keeping the Imperial forces at bay.
What's the Ratway?
Everyone knows the Thieves Guild uses the old sewer system beneath Riften as their hideout. I'd go down there myself, but that would leave Jarl Leila unprotected.
Yes, my lady.
Alright.
It's been
I'm keeping my eye on you.
poison, known as skooma.
As Jarl Leila's
Maven
houseguard,
present in our
Sure
I
thing,
would ask
boss.
that you maintain a
What do you know
respectable
of this?
distance from her at all
I
times.
believe it to be a falsehood perpetrated by the Empire in order to weaken the citizens' confidence in your ability to rule.
Excellent. Then there'll be no need to devote any resources to stop it. Thank you, Amelia. That will be all.
Yep, clearing out this table is problematic, but we can do it. One little thing at a time. Got one wing of the table done. That much is good. Now I'll do the fire at the center.
My lady, Maiden Blackbriar has sent word that she requires your seal in order to expand her shipments into Morrowind.
Little deja
But of
vu.
course, tell her she'll have it. Maven is one of the few people I can trust, and I'd be delighted to give her my blessing.
Yes, my lady. I will pass the good news on to her.
Let's do this one. Oh good, we are hidden here. I was worried. You dumbass! I don't want you to sit. But he really wants to. That's all I can reach from here. Let's do this little bit right quick. Alright. The rest of this stuff is probably going to be trouble. Oh, maybe not.
My lady, Maven Blackbriar has sent word that she requires
Good.
your seal in order to expand her
As Jarl
shipments into
Layla's
Morrowind.
houseguard, I would ask that you maintain respectable distance from her at all
Maven is one of
times.
the few people I can trust, and I'd be delighted to give her my blessing.
Let's clear this shelf.
Yes, my lady.
Now, before
pass
going
the
up the
good news on
stairs
to her.
toward the Jarl, let's go in here and visit the court
Did
wizard.
you have some sort of official business here?
This is Wylandria. She's fun. Let's check out her bedroom first. As you can see, uh-oh, I missed a goblet. Devastating.
I'd request that when speaking to Jarl Layla,
Let's
you
march
show
back
the
over
proper
there and get it.
respect.
That's how we want to do.
And Uriel, would you please stop declaring that the city is safe for the Jarl to roam?
Let's pickpocket
You and I
and
both
speak
know
to
that isn't
Anuriel,
true.
the steward.
Pickpocket.
Confiscated goods key, huh?
I would never knowingly place Layla in danger.
Keep your hands
you
to
know that,
yourself.
too. Why do you always question my judgment? You don't trust me.
I trust you. I'm just concerned about her safety, that's all. Don't be angry with me.
I'm not angry with you. Tell you what, lover. Meet me in my chambers later and we can discuss the situation in private. Welcome to Mistvale Keep. I'm Jarl Layla's steward, Anuriel. As Riften's steward, I'm afraid I can provide only limited assistance, but speak your mind. If you're here to report any instances of corruption, be confident that we're handling these rumors accordingly. Yes?
I don't want a bounty quest, so I'll skip looking for work. What do you do around here?
As steward, I serve as an intermediary between the Jarl and her subjects. I also handle the less important and day-to-day policies that affect daily life in Riften. Lately, I've had my hands full suppressing these ridiculous accusations of corruption in the keep.
What are the rumors of corruption you mentioned?
There are those that believe the Jarl does nothing for this city, that it's corrupt and run by the Blackbriar family. I can assure you that this is entirely false. We are fully in control of everything.
Tell me about the Thieves Guild.
I'd hardly call them a guild. More like unorganized rabble. In fact, I wouldn't say they were a threat at all. No, our resources should be spent on preparations for invasion. You're welcome in Riften, as long as you continue to obey our laws.
Okay, and Oh,
As
Landry is
Layla's
out,
houseguard,
so let's
I would
speak to
ask
her
that you
next.
maintain
But first, we'll pick her pocket.
respect the distance.
To the extent we can, anyway.
Don't even think about it.
We can't steal her staff of fireballs. Even with 100 pickpocket. Let's talk to her now.
Try not to set anything on fire, all right? I know you. Where was it? Oh, you were getting something for me. Did we have an appointment? No. It was a delivery? I can't remember. Excuse my disorganization, but I'm in the middle of some delicate experiments. Need something?
What has you so preoccupied?
Someone actually interested in what I'm doing. Amazing. Well, allow me to explain. My experimentation involves a magical construct and a reagent that will allow the construct to maintain a field of permanent harmonic energy.
I would use the blue thing.
The blue thing? But even the simplest harmonic field is composed of entirely... Wait just a moment. The blue thing. Yes. I can see your point. Draw out the necessary energies using a Jarl apparatus. But wait. What about soul reversal? You must be aware of the consequences when using the apparatus near an open magic field.
How about using calipers?
Calipers? That's utterly ridiculous. Maybe long ago you could just find calipers in every household across Tamriel, but not anymore. Hold on. You've given me a brilliant idea. Just as calipers hold materials in place, a soul siphon can hold magic fields in place. Genius! And I'm sure you've completely worked out how to counteract complete dimensional collapse, right?
Swallow a soul gem?
Are you completely insane? Swallow a soul gem? That has to be the most brilliant and unexpected solution I've heard in a long time. It solves all of my problems and keeps the field stable. Now all I need... Wait, what were we talking about?
Now where can I learn more about magic?
Winterhold. You want the college there. They teach quite a bit.
Now, because we already picked up her spoon, it assumes we've already started her quest, but where exactly am I going?
Let's see. Last time I used the Dwemer's spoon was at my dear friend Bodhi's house in Iverstead. Fellstar Farm, I believe it's called. The Orichalcum ingot should still be at Winterhold at the Frozen Hearth Inn. I don't know why I didn't just take it with me. And last is the Soul Gem. I left that one in Windhelm at the White Phial Alchemy Shop. It was a good trade, too. Oh well.
Alright,
Okay. Now where did I put those spiders?
now that Wylandria is out of the room, we should have a pretty easy time clearing it out. This great sword's improperly mounted, so have to turn collision off to get it, which I don't mind doing. Skull. Alright. Let's get started up on her counter now. And a note, per your requests. Let me get where I can take that off my list. Wylandria, your letter sent to the College of Winterhold was rife with grammatical errors and incomplete thoughts, making them difficult to discern. Could you please clarify the points below for us to ensure we're on the same page? We have no record of a cloud emulsifier device or anything involving the magical manipulation of the clouds. Second, we can't send you a sample of the Heart of Lorcan for experimentation, as no such sample exists. And finally, in the 14th paragraph of your letter, you mention a substance called green mote. We're assuming this was a simple mistake and you meant to write green spore. If that's the case, we have contaminated skeever carcasses with the disease available if needed. We'd also like to thank you for sending us your notes regarding your experiments. We've all had quite a grand time reading them. Mirabelle Irvine. Alright, while Andrea's room is clear, let's...
I know you. Where was it? Oh.
I would
You
ask
were
that you
getting
maintain
something for me.
respect.
Here's another person, Sayrland, the Jarl's other son. Let's take his stuff, and then we'll talk to him. Excellent.
Oh, come to gloat, have we? To poke fun at the Jarl's youngest son? I could feel you laughing behind my back. Did Harold send you to taunt me? Yes?
Why would I ridicule you?
Because I did something not a soul in this blood-stained house of war has the backbone to do. Dared to speak my mind. I dared speak of the Empire and the lies that have been spread by Ulfric, the leader of the Stormcloaks. Now my mother's stripped me of my heritage and incarcerated me here like a common criminal, and my brother has all but disowned me. Be wary what you say around here, friend. You'll find not all take kindly to insurrection.
What sort of lies has Ulfric been spreading?
Ulfric only cares about one thing. Ulfric. He's ordained himself the future High King of Skyrim, and steps on anyone that gets in his way. He's begun a rebellion against those that wish to eradicate the worship of Talos, and uses it as his rallying cry. His cause may be true, but the man is a lie. All he holds in his heart is lust for the throne. Until next time.
Alright.
Out of my way. The son of the Jarl has no time for idle conversation with travelers.
Well, let's go ahead and pickpocket and speak to Jarl Layla. And then we can finish clearing the keep.
Welcome to Riften, traveler. I hope the road fared well for you. What can I do for you? Speak. I wish to hear everything my subjects have to say. Yes?
What's your stance on the war?
Well, I feel Ulfric's cause is just. My concern is for the people of the Rift. How can they continue to lead their already meager lives with dark clouds looming overhead? My heart goes out to them. If only our coffers were deeper, I could protect them as they were my own family.
What of Ulfric himself?
With the Stormcloaks at his back, Ulfric's poised to rid Skyrim of the Empire's forces and invalidate our involvement with the White Gold Concordat. Many have died taking up arms for this cause. I fear that the land will be stained with blood for years to come.
What is the White Gold Concordat?
Surely you're aware of the Great War between the Imperials and the Elves who called themselves the Aldmeri Dominion? When the smoke cleared, the White Gold Concordat was signed. It was supposedly a treaty aimed at establishing peace within the Empire. One of the terms of a treaty was the outlawing of worship to Talos. To the Stormcloaks, this was viewed as the moment when the Empire became unworthy of the allegiance of any true Nord.
Tell me about the Thieves Guild.
We're all eager to see them brought to justice. Maven Blackbriar has assured me that they're being dealt with appropriately. As one of our city's most influential citizens, she's taken it upon herself to oversee their incarceration. Sadly, they're proving elusive, but I have confidence that Maven won't give up until this city has been rid of them all. Good journey to you.
Alright, we
But
gotta
of
get
course,
this.
tell her she'll have it.
We gotta get all
Maven
this
is one
stuff
of the few people
now.
I can trust, and I'd be delighted to give her my blessing.
That's difficult though, because these guards never
As
leave
Jarl
the
Pass
Layla's
the
stand.
good news
housecarl,
on to her.
I would
We read of crossed daggers.
ask that you maintain respect. Distance from her at all times.
So, is this what it's come to? You'd have your own flesh and blood hanged, just to solidify your grip as the next Jarl.
If that's what it will take, then so be it.
What's become of us? We used to be inseparable, always fighting back to back and letting nothing stand in our way.
I'd be a lot warmer and a lot happier with a belly of me.
None for the better, I'm afraid.
I've done what I needed to do to heal.
Hail, companion.
Doesn't matter what I really believe.
If you journey north, keep well away from Snapleg Cave. Damned hag ravens have infested the place.
I mostly deal with petty thievery and drunken brawls. Been too long since we've had a good bandit raid.
My lady, Maven Blackbriar has sent word that she requires your seal in order to expand her shipments into Morrowind.
Got to thinking. Maybe I'm the Dragonborn.
We've read Pirate King of the Abyssin.
I just don't know it yet.
Raven is one of the few people I can trust, and I'd be delighted to give her my blessing.
Now all that's left in this room
Yes,
is this
my lady.
chest.
I will pass the good news on to her.
Good. Tough part's over.
I find your hand in my pocket. I'm going to cut it off.
Unmid, I wish to travel about the city. Prepare an escort, please.
Begging your pardon, my lady, but I strongly recommend against it.
Anuriel seems to think that seeing me on the streets might bolster the city's morale.
My lady, there could be agents.
Go fiddling with any locks around here. We're going to have a real problem.
Are you willing to take that risk?
No, of course, you're right.
What
I'll
are
stay
you
here
doing,
for now.
dude?
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Watch the magic.
My lady?
It's been brought to my attention that the poison, known as skooma, may be present in our city. What do you know of this?
Gentleman's Guide to Whiterun
I
and
believe
Watcher
it
of
to be a
Stones, we've
false
read already.
perpetrated by the Empire in order to weaken the citizens' confidence in your ability to rule.
Excellent. Then there'll be no need to devote any resources to stop
There's
it.
the door into the
Thank you,
barracks, which we saw
That will
already.
be all.
Got another table to clear over here. What's in this room? Apparently nothing. Here's an adept locked display case, and I do have one extra pick to break. Missed that elven war axe.
Now I remember. You're the new member of the Companions. So you what? That's the
Very
new...
good with that fire.
I just realized I forgot something important. We can buy the
Welcome
adept
to
level
Mist Vale
alteration
I'm
spells
Jarl Layla's steward,
from
Anuriel.
Wylandria.
As Jarl Layla's
I
houseguard,
almost
I would
completely
ask that
spaced
you maintain
it.
a respectable distance from her at all
Shipments
times.
into Morrowind.
What have you got for sale?
Spells and incantations for
thanks.
those with the talent to cast them.
She sells a full set of apprentice spells and the adept alteration spells. We already got Detect Life from Treva's Watch. Iron Flesh, that's the adept armor spell. It's above, shoot, what is the word I'm looking for? It's up above, Stone Flesh, which is up above Oak Flesh. Telekinesis, can pull an object to you from a distance, add it to your inventory, or throw it. And water breathing, can breathe underwater for 60 seconds. Now these are all terrific ways to raise alteration.
I have to...
So let's use those 3 spell tokens.
Remember, ward first, then summon. Yes, my lady. I will pass the good news on to her.
Water breathing might be the fastest way, but Detect Life is pretty darn good too.
As Riften's steward, I'm afraid I can
Go
provide
cast
only
your fancy
limited
magic someplace else.
Speak your mind.
There's fine steel at the Scorched Hammer, if you fancy a new blade.
Anuriel, a word, please.
Short History of Morrowind. This is a new book. There we go. A Short History of Morrowind by Jeanette Sitta, I think. From the introduction, Led by the legendary prophet Veloth, the ancestors of the Dunmer, exiles from Altmer cultures in present-day Somerset Isle, came to the region of Morrowind. In earliest times, the Dunmer were harassed or dominated by Nord sea raiders. When the scattered Dunmer tribes consolidated into the predecessors of the modern Great House clans, they threw out the Nord oppressors and successfully resisted further incursions. The ancient ancestor worship of the tribes was in time superseded by the monolithic tribunal temple theocracy, and the Dunmer grew into a great nation called Resdain. Resdain was the last of the provinces to submit to Tiber Septim. Like Black Marsh, it was never successfully invaded, and was peacefully incorporated by treaty into the Empire as the province of Morrowind. Almost 4 centuries after the coming of the Imperial Legions, Morrowind is still occupied by Imperial Legions with a figurehead Imperial King, though the Empire has reserved most functions of the traditional local government to the ruling councils of the 5 great houses. On Vardenfell District. In 3rd Era 414, Vardenfell territory, previously a temple preserve under Imperial protection, was reorganized as an Imperial provincial district. Vardenfell had been maintained as a preserve administered by the temple since the Treaty of the Armistice, and except for a few great house settlements sanctioned by the temple, Vardenfell was previously uninhabited and undeveloped. But when the centuries-old temple ban on trade and settlement of Vardenfell was revoked by King of Morrowind, a flood of Imperial colonists and Great House Dunmer came to Vardenfell, expanding old settlements and building new ones. The new district was divided into Redoran, Hlalu, Telvanni, and Temple districts, each separately administered by local house councils or temple priesthoods, and all under the advice and consent of Duke Dren and the district council in Ebonheart. Local law became a mixture of house law and imperial law in house districts, jointly enforced by house guards and legion guards, with temple law and imperial law enforced in the temple district by ordinators. The temple was still recognized as the majority religion, but worship of the 9 divines was protected by the legions and encouraged by imperial cult missions. The temple district included the city of Vivec, the fortress of Ghostgate, and all sacred and profane sites, including those blighted areas inside the Ghost Fence, and all unsettled and wilderness areas on Vardenfell. In practice, this district included all parts of Vardenfell not claimed for Redoran, Hlalu, or Telvanni districts. The temple stubbornly fought all development in their district, and were largely successful. House Hlalu, in combination with Imperial colonists, embarked on a vigorous campaign of settlement and development. In the decades after reorganization, Balmora and the Ascadian Isles regions have grown steadily. Caldera and Pelagiad are completely new settlements, and all legion forts were expanded to accommodate larger garrisons. House Telvanni, normally conservative and isolationist, has been surprisingly aggressive in expanding beyond their traditional tower villages. Disregarding the protests of the other houses, the Temple, the Duke, and the District Council, Telvanni pioneers have been encroaching on the wild lands reserved to the Temple. The Telvanni Council officially disavows responsibility for these rogue Telvanni settlements, but it is an open secret that they are encouraged and supported by ambitious Telvanni mage lords. Under pressure from the Temple, conservative House Redoran has steadfastly resisted expansion in their district. As a result, House Redoran and the Temple are in danger of being politically and economically marginalized by the more aggressive and expansionist Hlalu and Telvanni interests. The Imperial administration faces many challenges in the Vardenfell district, but the most serious are the Great House rivalries, animosity from the Ashlander nomads, internal conflicts within the Temple itself, and the Red Mountain Blight. Struggles between Great House, Temple, and Imperial interests to control Vardenfell's resource could at any time erupt into full-scale war. Ashlanders raid settlements, plunder caravans, and kill foreigners on their wild lands. The Temple has unsuccessfully attempted to silence criticism and calls for reform within its ranks. But most serious are the plagues and diseased hosts produced by the blight storms sweeping out from Red Mountain. Vardenfell and all Morrowind have long been menaced by the legendary evils of Dagoth and his ash vampire kin dwelling beneath Red Mountain. For centuries, the Temple has contained this threat within the Ghost Fence, but recently the Temple's resources and will have faltered, and the threat from Red Mountain has grown in scale and intensity. If the Ghost Fence should fail and hosts of blighted monsters were to spill out across Vardenfell's towns and villages, the Empire might have no choice but to evacuate Vardenfell district and abandon it to disease and corruption.
Yes, my lady?
Anyone who's played Elder Scrolls
It's been brought to
3,
my attention that
Morrowind,
poison
should
known
be
as
very
steel
familiar with all of
may be
that.
present in our city. What do you know of this?
I believe it to be a falsehood perpetrated by the
Alright,
Empire
let's go
in order to
clockwise through
weaken
this
citizens'
bedroom.
confidence in your ability.
A note called Sibby Blackbriar. We'll pull it off the list. A quick note regarding my son Sibby. He's to be treated as I'd expect you to treat any one of the Blackbriar family, and all of his requests are to be honored without question. However, if he wishes to be released, you are not to do so unless I expressly authorize it. Sibby needs to learn his place, and the only way that will happen is if he's kept under lock and key. Maven. Huh.
No need to devote any resources to stop him. Thank you, Anuri. That will be all.
This is Anuriel's bedroom, if I remember right. We can work our way clockwise through here. The Dowry. That's another new book. The Dowry, Ancient Tales of the Dwemer, Part 10, by Marabar Sul. Inale was the wealthiest landowner in Gunal, and he had over the years saved a tremendous dowry for the man who would marry his daughter, Genefra. When she reached the age of consent, he locked the gold away for safekeeping and announced his intention to have her marry. She was a comely lass, a scholar, a great athlete, but dour and brooding in aspect. This personality defect did not bother her potential suitors any more than her positive traits impressed them. Every man knew the tremendous wealth that would be his as the husband of Genefra and son-in-law of Inale. That alone was enough for hundreds to come to Gunal to pay court. The man who will marry my daughter, said Inale to the assembled, must not be doing so purely out of avarice. He must demonstrate his own wealth to my satisfaction. This simple pronouncement removed a vast majority of the suitors, who knew they could not impress the landowner with their meager fortunes. A few dozen did come forward within a few days, clad in fine Killark cloth of spun silver, accompanied by exotic servants, traveling in magnificent carriages. Of all who came who met with Inale's approval, none arrived in a more resplendent fashion than Welyn Nerillic. The young man, who no one had ever heard of, arrived in a shining ebon coach drawn by a team of dragons, his clothing of rarest manufacture, and accompanied by an army of the most fantastical servants any of Gunal had ever seen. Valets with eyes on all sides of their heads, maidservants that seemed cast in gemstones. But such was not enough with Inale. The man who marries my daughter must prove himself an intelligent fellow, for I would not have an ignoramus as a son-in-law and business partner, he declared. This eliminated a large part of the wealthy suitors, who, through their lives of luxury, had never needed to think very much, if at all. Still, some came forward over the next few days, demonstrating their wit and learning, quoting the great sages of the past, and offering their philosophies of metaphysics and alchemy. Welyn Nerillic too came, and asked Inale to dine at the villa he had rented outside of Gunal. There the landowner saw scores of scribes working on translations of Aldmeri tracts, and enjoyed the young man's somewhat irreverent but intriguing intelligence. Nevertheless, though he was much impressed with Welyn Nerillic, Inale had another challenge. I love my daughter very much, said Inale, and I hope that the man who marries her will make her happy as well. Should any of you make her smile, she and the great dowry are yours. The suitors lined up for days, singing her songs, proclaiming their devotion, describing her beauty in the most poetic of terms. Genefra merely glared at all with hatred and melancholia. Inale, who stood by her side, began to despair at last. His daughter's suitors were failing to a man at this task. Finally, Welyn Nerillic came to the chamber. I will make your daughter smile, he said. I dare say I'll make her laugh, but only after you've agreed to marry us. If she is not delighted within 1 hour of our engagement, the wedding can be called off. Inale turned to his daughter. She was not smiling, but her eyes had sparked with some morbid curiosity in this young man. As no other suitor had even registered that for her, he agreed. The dowry is naturally not to be paid till after you've wed, said Inale. Being engaged is not enough. Might I see the dowry still? Asked Welyn. Knowing how fabled the treasure was, and understanding that this would likely be the closest the young man would come to possessing it, Inale agreed. He had grown quite fond of Welyn. On his orders, Wellin, Inale, Glum Genefra, and the Castellan delved deep into the stronghold of Gunal. The first vault had to be opened by touching a series of runic symbols. Should one of the marks be mispressed, a volley of poisoned arrows would have struck the thief. Inale was particularly proud of the next level of security. A lock composed of blades with 18 tumblers required 3 keys to be turned simultaneously to allow entry. The blades were designed to eviscerate any who merely picked one of the locks. Finally, they reached the storeroom. It was entirely empty. "By Lorcan, we've been burgled," cried Inale. "But how? Who could have done this?" "A humble, but if I may say so, rather talented burglar," said Wellin. "A man who has loved your daughter from afar for many years, but did not possess the glamour or the learning to impress. That is, until the gold from her dowry afforded me the opportunity." "You?" bellowed Inale, scarcely able to believe it. Then something even more unbelievable happened. Genefra began to laugh. She had never even dreamed of meeting anyone like this thief. She threw herself into his arms before her father's outraged eyes. After a moment, Inale too began to laugh. Genefra and Wellin were married in a month's time. Though he was in fact quite poor and had little scholarship, Inale was amazed how much his wealth increased with such a son-in-law and business partner. He only made certain never to ask from whence came the excess gold. Publisher's note. The tale of a man trying to win the hand of a maiden whose father, usually a wealthy man or a king, tests each suitor is quite common. See, for instance, the more recent Four Suitors of Benita by Joel Yolives. The behavior of the characters is quite out of character for the Dwemer. No one today knows their marriage customs, or even if they had marriage at all. One rather odd theory of the disappearance of the dwarves came from this and a few other tales of Marabar Sul. It was proposed that the Dwemer never, in fact, left. They did not depart Nirn, much less the continent of Tamriel, and they are still among us, disguised. These scholars use the story of Azura and the box to suggest that the Dwemer feared Azura, a being they could neither understand nor control, and they adopted the dress and manner of Keimer and Altmer in order to hide from Azura's gaze. There's that. A few very valuable gems here. And another adept locked display case. Now I have 5 lockpicks to break. We've been going nearly an hour, but I think I can still clear out the Jarl's quarters before I end this video. I'll have to save the jail for next time, though. There we go. The Dance in Fire V5. This is one of the ones I haven't read. A Dance in Fire, Chapter 5, by Wogan Jarth. "Soap, the forest will eat love, straight ahead, stupid and a stupid cow." The voice boomed out so suddenly that Decimus Scotti jumped. He stared off into the dim jungle glade from which he only heard animal and insect calls and the low whistling of wind moments before. It was a queer, oddly accented voice of indiscriminate gender, tremulous in its modulations but unmistakably human, or at the very least elven, an isolated Bosmer perhaps with a poor grasp of the Cyrodiilic language. After countless hours of plodding through the dense knot of Valenwood jungle, any voice of slight familiarity sounded wondrous. "Hello?" he cried. "Beetles on any names? Certainly yesterday, yes," the voice called back. "Who, what, and when, and mice?" "I'm afraid I don't understand," replied Scotti, turning toward the brambled tree, thick as a wagon, where the voice had issued. "But you needn't be afraid of me. My name is Decimus Scotti. I'm a Cyrodiil from the Imperial City. I came here to help rebuild Valenwood after the war, you see, and now I'm rather lost." "Gemstones and grilled slaves. The war," moaned the voice, and broke down into sobs. "You know about the war? I wasn't sure. I wasn't even sure how far away from the border I am now." Scotti began slowly walking toward the tree. He dropped Reglius' satchel to the ground and held out his empty hands. "I'm unarmed. I only want to know the way to the closest town. I'm trying to meet my friend Leodes Juris in Sylvanar." "Sylvanar!" the voice laughed. It laughed even louder as Scotti circled the tree. "Worms and wine! Worms and wine! Sylvanar sings for worms and wine!" There was nothing to be found anywhere around the tree. "I don't see you. Why are you hiding?" In frustration born of hunger and exhaustion, he struck the tree trunk. A sudden shiver of gold and red erupted from a hollow nook above, and Scotty was surrounded by 6 winged creatures scarcely more than a few inches long. Bright crimson eyes were set on either side of tunnel-like protuberances, the animals' always open mouths. They were legless, and their thin, rapidly beating aureate wings seemed poorly constructed to transport their fat, swollen bellies, and yet they darted through the air like sparks from a fire. Whirling about the poor clerk, they began chattering what he now understood to be perfect nonsense. Wines and worms, how far from the border am I? Academic garnishments, and alas, Leo's juris. Hello, I'm afraid I'm unarmed. Smoke and flames, and the closest town is dear Oblivion. Swollen on bad meat and indigo nimbus, but you needn't be afraid of me. Why are you hiding? Why are you hiding? Before I begin to friend, love me, Lady Zuleika. Furious with the mimics, Scotty swung his arms, driving them up into the treetops. He stomped back to the clearing and opened up the satchel again, as he had done some hours before. There was still, unsurprisingly, nothing useful in the bag, and nothing to eat in any corner or pocket. A goodly amount of gold. He smiled grimly, as he had done before, at the irony of being financially solvent in the jungle. A stack of neat blank contracts from Lord Vannick's building commission, some thin cord, and an oiled leather cloak for bad weather. At least, Scotty considered, he had not suffered rain. A rolling moan of thunder reminded Scotty of what he had suspected for some weeks now. He was cursed. Within an hour's time, he was wearing the cloak and clawing his way through mud. The trees, which had earlier allowed no sunlight in, provided no shelter against the pounding storm and wind. The only sounds that pierced the pelting of the rain were the mocking calls of the flying creatures, flitting just above, battling their nonsense. Scotty bellowed at them, through rocks, but they seemed enamored of his company. While he was reaching to grab a promising-looking stone to hurl at his tormentors, Scotty felt something shift beneath his feet. Wet but solid ground suddenly liquefied and became a rolling tide, rushing him forward. Light as a leaf, he flew head over feet over head, until the mud flow dropped and he continued forward, plunging down into a river 25 feet below. The storm passed quite as instantly as it had arrived. The sun melted the dark clouds and warmed Scotty as he swam for the shore. There another sign of the Khajiit incursion into Valenwood greeted him. A small fishing village had stood there once, so recently extinct that it smoldered like a still warm corpse. Dirt cairns that had once housed fish by the smell of them had been ravaged, their bounty turned to ash. Rafts and skiffs lay broken, scuttled, half submerged. All the villagers were no more, either dead or refugees far away, or so he presumed. Something banged against the wall of one of the ruins. Scotty ran to investigate. "My name is Decimus Scotty," sang the first winged beast. "I'm a Cyrodiil from the Imperial City. I came here to help rebuild Valenwood after the war, you see, and now I'm rather lost." "I swell to maculate, Ape-neck," agreed one of its companions. "I don't see you. Why are you hiding?" As they fell into chattering, Scotty began to search the rest of the village. Surely the cats had left something behind, a scrap of dried meat, a morsel of fish sausage, anything. But they had been immaculate in their complete annihilation. There was nothing to eat anywhere. Scotty did find one item of possible use under the tumbled remains of a stone hut, a bow and 2 arrows made of bone. The string had been lost, likely burned away in the heat of the fire, but he pulled the cord from Reglius's satchel and restrung it. The creatures flew over and hovered nearby as he worked. The convent of the sacred Leo's Juris? You know about the war. Worms and wine circumscribe a golden host, Ape-neck. The moment the cord was taut, Scotty knocked an arrow and swung around, pulling the string tight against his chest. The winged beasts, having had experience with archers before, shot off in all directions in a blur. They needn't have bothered. Scotty's first arrow dove into the ground 3 feet in front of him. He swore and retrieved it. The mimics, having likewise had experience with poor archers before, returned at once to hovering nearby and mocking Scotty. On his second shot, Scotty did much better in purely technical terms. He remembered how the archers in Falinesti looked when he pulled himself out from under the Horvor tick, and they were all taking aim at him. He extended his left hand, and right elbow in a symmetrical line, drawing the bow so his hand touched his jawline, and he could see the creature in his sight like the arrow was a finger he was pointing with. The bolt missed the target by only 2 feet, but it continued on its trajectory, snapping when it struck a rock wall. Scotty walked to the river's edge. He had only one arrow left, and perhaps he considered it would be most practical to find a slow-moving fish and fire it on that. If he missed, at least there was less of a chance of breaking the shaft, and he could always retrieve it from the water. A rather torpid, whiskered fish rolled by, and he took aim at it. "My name is Decimus Scotti," one of the creatures howled, frightening the fish away. "Stupid and a stupid cow, will you dance a dance in fire?" Scotti turned and aimed the arrow as he had done before. This time, however, he remembered to plant his feet as the archers had done, 7 inches apart, knees straight, left leg slightly forward to meet the angle of his right shoulder. He released the last arrow. The arrow also proved a serviceable prong for roasting the creature against the smoking hot stones of one of the ruins. Its other companions had disappeared instantly after the beast was slain, and Scotti was able to dine in peace. The meat proved to be delicious, if scarcely more than a first course. He was picking the last of it from the bones, when a boat sailed into view from around the bend of the river. At the helm were Bosmer sailors. Scotti ran to the bank and waved his arms. They averted their eyes and continued past. "You bloody callous bastards!" Scotti howled. "Knaves, hooligans, ape-necks, scoundrels!" A gray-whiskered form came out from a hatch, and Scotti immediately recognized him as Griff Malin, the poet-translator he had met in the caravan from Cyrodiil. He peered Scotti's direction, and his eyes lit up with delight. "Decimus Scotti, precisely the man I hoped to see. I want to get your thoughts on a rather puzzling passage in the Menoriad play bar. It begins, 'I went weeping into the world, searching for wonders.' Perhaps you're familiar with it." "I'd like nothing better than to discuss the Menoriad play bar with you, Griff," Scotti called back. "Would you let me come aboard, though, first?" Overjoyed at being on a ship bound for any port at all, Scotti was true to his word. For over an hour, as the boat rolled down the river past the blackened remnants of Bosmeri villages, he asked no questions and spoke nothing of his life over the past weeks. He merely listened to Malin's theories of Merethic Aldmeri esoterica. The translator was undemanding of his guest's scholarship, accepting nods and shrugs as civilized conversation. He even produced some wine and fish jelly, which he shared with Scotti absent-mindedly as he expounded on his various theses. Finally, while Malin was searching for a reference to some minor point in his notes, Scotti asked, "Rather off subject, but I was wondering where we're bound." "The very heart of the province, Sylvanar," Malin said, not looking up from the passage he was reading. "It's somewhat bothersome, actually, as I wanted to go to Woodhearth first to talk to a Bosmer there, who claims to have an original copy of Dirith Yalmilhiad, if you can believe it, but for the time being that has to wait. Somerset Isle has surrounded the city and is in the process of starving the citizenry until they surrender. It's a tiresome prospect, since the Bosmeri are happy to eat one another, so there's a risk that at the end only one fat wood elf will remain to wave the flag." "That is vexing," agreed Scotti sympathetically. "To the east, the Khajiit are burning everything, and to the west, the High Elves are waging war. I don't suppose the borders to the north are clear." "They're even worse," replied Malin, finger on the page, still distracted. "The Cyrodiils and Redguards don't want Bosmer refugees streaming into their provinces. It only stands to reason. Imagine how much more criminally inclined they'd be now that they're homeless and hungry." "So," murmured Scotti, feeling a shiver, "we're trapped in Valenwood." "Not at all. I need to leave fairly shortly myself, as my publisher has set a very definite deadline for my new book of translations. From what I understand, one merely petitions to the Sylvanar for special border protection, and one can cross into Cyrodiil with impunity." "Petition the Sylvanar, or petition at Sylvanar?" "Petition the Sylvanar at Sylvanar. It's an odd nomenclature that is typical of this place, the sort of thing that makes my job as a translator that much more challenging. The Sylvanar, he, or rather they, are the closest the Bosmeri have to a great leader. The essential thing to remember about the Sylvanar," Malin smiled, finding the passage he was looking for. "Here, a fortnight, inexplicable, the world burns into a dance. There's that metaphor again." "What were you saying about the Sylvanar?" asked Scotti. "The essential thing to remember." "I don't remember what I was saying," replied Malin, turning back to his oration. In a week's time, the little boat bumped along the shallow, calmer waters of the foaming current the Xylo had become, and Decimus Scotti first saw the city of Sylvanar. If Falinesti was a tree, then Sylvanar was a flower, a magnificent pile of faded shades of green, red, blue, and white, shining with crystalline residue. Malin had mentioned offhand, when not otherwise explaining Aldmeri Prosody, that Sylvanar had once been a blossoming glade in the forest, but owing to some spell or natural cause, the tree's sap began flowing with translucent liqueur. The process of the sap flowing and hardening over the colorful trees had formed the web of the city. Malon's description was intriguing, but it hardly prepared him for the city's beauty. "What is the finest, most luxurious tavern here?" Scotty asked one of the Bosmer boatmen. "Prithala Hall," Malon answered. "But why don't you stay with me? I'm visiting an acquaintance of mine, a scholar I think you'll find fascinating. His hovel isn't much, but he has the most extraordinary ideas about the principles of a Merethic Aldmeri tribe, the Sarmathi. Under any other circumstances I would happily accept," said Scotty graciously. "But after weeks of sleeping on the ground or on a raft and eating whatever I could scrounge, I feel the need for some indulgent creature comforts, and then, after a day or two, I'll petition the Sylvanar for safe passage to Cyrodiil." The men bade each other goodbye. Griff Malon gave him the address of his publisher in the Imperial City, which Scotty accepted and quickly forgot. The clerk wandered the streets of Sylvanar, crossing bridges of amber, admiring the petrified forest architecture. In front of a particularly estimable palace of silvery reflective crystal, he found Prithala Hall. He took the finest room and ordered a gluttonous meal of the finest quality. At a nearby table, he saw two very fat fellows, a man and a Bosmer, remarking how much finer the food was there than at the Sylvanar's palace. They began to discuss the war and some issues of finances and rebuilding provincial bridges. The man noticed Scotty looking at them, and his eyes flashed recognition. "Scotty, is that you? Kinnereth, where have you been? I've had to make all the contacts here on my own." At the sound of his voice, Scotty recognized him. The fat man was Leodes Juris, vastly engorged. Alright, well, I wasn't expecting to find 2 more long books in Anuriel's room. So...
Drink, you go to the Bee and Barb. Stay out of the Ragged Flagon. Stay out of the Ratway.
I'm gonna leave the Jarl's quarters for the next video too, because we've run up over an hour. So I'll quickly clear out this little staircase. Enter the Jarl's quarters, and then we'll end the video. We still have the Jarl's quarters and Riften jail here inside the Mistvale Keep building, and then we'll move on with the rest of the city. Until then, thank you very much for watching Let's Play Skyrim, and have a great day. Goodbye.